We answer your questions 24/7 every day. No, we don't answer your questions every day, but you can post your questions every day. So it's you can answer your questions once a day, every day. But you can post your questions 24/7 by going to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. You can ask those questions any time of the day. If you ask them during the show, we may get them in on that show. A lot of times we have a lot of questions, so they may come in the next day or two. But go ahead and throw them in. If you want to be more direct, you can of course go to Makana. You can ask the questions, vote on the questions, talk about the questions, and all you need to do to get into Makana is to go to officehours.global/join, sign up for the newsletter. There's links in there that will show you how to get to Makana, how to get to Discord, all the fun things. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
First one comes from Douglas Carmichael this morning, and Douglas asks, Yamaha is signed on as an official sponsor of the OBS project. Discuss, and he's got a link there.
Did anyone get a chance to look at video links are hard for us?
I just saw that, and I went to it, and it's an 8-minute long video, so it's like a little tough when one comes in like that. Yeah, and I imagine it's about as an OBS sponsorship, interfacing their podcaster style mixers. It looks like the ones that are featured there, the small, 12 input mixers into. Interfacing them with OBS, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just really talking about the small mixers going into OBS. I mean, that's what I scanned through the video. It's really hard. I'm always surprised when people do. I mean, it's great to do a video launch, but it's really great to have a video launch that's combined with a text launch that people can scan and just grab the pertinent information. So hopefully OBS will do that too. Maybe they did the whole thing in OBS. Maybe that was the whole thing. Next question.
Mariella Zusha-Mira in Webelow is up next. How do you get video into vectors if it's in the cloud and the video is on the ground?
There's a variety of different ways to do that. You can use NDI directly from the ground. So we've seen people bring video into it, because it's really not how do you get it into vector. It's how do you get it into the cloud. And so SRT, the popular ones are things like SRT, as well as NDI. But you could even do RTMP, so there's a lot of different ways to do that. You could also use something like a live view, and then you use the cloud infrastructure inside of the live view to go out to the, go out to it. And we're going to be testing some of that. We were thinking about doing it this weekend, but I think it'll be a little further out that we'll start testing, bringing individual signals from a live view into vector, and then being able to cut those there. And we're going to be doing that from a couple different places this summer. So stay tuned for that. Next question.
Rob Katz in Irvine, California. How can I record a Zoom meeting in HD using the original Mini? And I'm assuming the ATEM Mini there.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, put your old ATEM Mini on eBay and get ATEM Mini Pro HD so it will record. You could use something like this, which is an outboard HDMI recorder. So you just you route your HDMI output out of the Mini through one of these H.264 standalone game recorders, and you can plug a USB drive into it there and record onto your USB drive. So just hit a button and it starts recording 1080p and with your audio. So there's one way, and these are about $125 or $100 on. This is from ClearClick. So you can check those on Amazon. So standalone H.264 recorder is one way to do it, or in your PC if you have some type of recording software like QuickTime that you could go ahead and record the input of your camera separately if it comes in over the USB connector out of the old ATEM Mini.
Oh, and so here's the funny thing is that if you see me jump up, I keep on forgetting whether I'm a panelist or whether I'm a host. It's getting very confusing for me. One night I'm a panelist, the other I was a host, then a panelist, then a host.
She's my sister, my daughter, my sister. Yeah.
So if you're talking about the original ATEM Mini, yes, you can take the HDMI out. You could. You could theoretically also take a computer output, put it into the Mini, then have just have it connected to another computer and record it. As Courtney said, if it's a Mac Mini, if it just happens to be a Mac Mini, then you could do something like ZoomISO and then just put it out to something, or have something like Mimo Live, just join, or Ecamm, just join and hit record. So those are a couple of other ways to do it. I'm not sure whether that Mini is a Mac Mini or an ATEM Mini, but let us know if you need to ask that again. Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. How did extra hours go?
I think it went pretty well. So our Extra Hours is our new show that we did yesterday for the first time. It was really a hello world, so it was like, how do we make sure that this is all going to work? So the new thing for us is that we're doing it in the evening, but also that we are doing it inside of Vectar. So we're doing it all in the cloud. So the Zoom, our Zoom instance is a Zoom room. We talked about it a little bit last week. You can see more of the details. And then we're cutting it in Vectar. And so we didn't try to do very much. People were asking, like, where's lower thirds? We're like, they're coming. Like, we didn't want to, the idea was, let's just see what's going on. Because what happens is, like, for instance, yesterday, there's a little bit of flashing as we jump, and we realized that's probably because we had a hardware acceleration on inside of our instance. These are things like, oh, right. That would be the same. We saw a little bit of a sync issue that we're gonna take a look at and see where that sync issue is occurring. But again, we're gonna iron those things out. But that's why we're doing this, is so that we'll start by doing it over and over again. I mean, really, one of the many reasons that Office Hours began was because I had to figure out how Zoom worked. So I think that what we'll do is we'll start doing it every week. We're going to take next week off so we can kind of figure things out, and then the week after that we'll start up and we'll be doing it every week. And in that we will. You'll see us slowly add lower thirds and more graphics and more things, trying to kind of slowly push those envelopes of what that looks like. The format is a little different. It's just more conversational than this one, which I think both worked and didn't work last night. I think it worked. I think most of the time it was kind of fluid. It's hard because if someone is a little less assertive than the folks that are more assertive take over. So I felt like I talked too much, because you just get, the other thing is that I'm very sensitive to, as someone who came out of radio, I'm really sensitive to dead air. So if someone doesn't say something immediately, I will immediately jump in. I realize that's hard for me if in an open conversation, it's hard for me to do that. So anyway, it's an interesting puzzle that we're going to keep on working on. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I had to stifle myself from jumping in on you there, Alex, because from last night. So if I butt in a little bit too much, it's just a holdover from last night where we had kind of an open forum. So it was interesting. I think it'd be nice for all of our members that were panelists that are in Norway or in Germany or in the Philippines, Mickey. Makes it a more, if they're not working during that.
Well, I don't know if it makes it better for the folks in Norway and Germany. That's first thing in the morning for that. I mean, that's like middle of the night for them. But definitely
our 6 p.m. Yeah.
our Australian, Asian counterparts. Yeah,
Norwegian.
And then Norwegian's pretty late for that.
Yeah,
so
maybe so.
Yeah, or pretty early
morning.
Very early morning.
We get up at 6 a.m. here.
But yeah, so the main thing is that we are hoping to serve another part of the world with it as well as experiment. So we're experimenting with the format. You're going to see us keep on doing this. Every show is going to be a little different. Format's going to change. The infrastructure is going to change. The flow is going to change. We want to experiment with what online events look like, how they're done, and who's in them, and everything else. So I would expect more of that. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California. What happened to the audio stream for the momentousness Monday show? Did I miss the link? I really wanted to listen into the show during work tonight. That's another QR code question.
Well, you can always go to YouTube. So it was on YouTube. The infrastructure for the audio stream is just another aspect that we hadn't worked on. This is, again, a hello world kind of thing. It's not going to have all the infrastructure that this show has right now. So there's lots of things it doesn't have, and audio is one of them. But you could open up YouTube and listen to it. So it's not that you couldn't listen to it in the background. It's just that you couldn't listen to it through the radio app. One of the things that I don't know exactly, but by the end of the summer, we'll have an instance that's in the cloud that's doing the same thing. There's a couple pieces of that puzzle that I have to figure out, and so it's not as straightforward right now. All the audio for the show goes into the TriCaster, or not in the TriCaster, but into Vectar, and is processed there and streamed from there. We're not taking audio out from it to something else, and so that'll be another piece of the puzzle that we have to think about. We're already working on it, but we don't have it done yet. So that's the reason that that's not happening yet. But again, we totally expect to do it. We just haven't got it quite there yet. So stay tuned. We'll have the audio stream somewhere in the not too distant future. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. 3 major record companies are suing generative AI music startups Suno and Udio. Is this just the Napster era all over again, or do they have a point? And he's got a link there to a Billboard magazine article about it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I haven't had time to read the article, Douglas, but I'll tell you, I've always been perplexed by the music industry's lawsuits for copyright infringement, where one artist will sue another artist because you have the same 4 notes in your song that I have in my song, although the lyrics are different and the 4 notes lead into a completely different structure. We own those 4 notes. So those kind of copyright lawsuits perplex me. And any other copyright lawsuit, you have to prove that the level of proof is that this was cut and pasted, you had access to it, and it wasn't just a serendipitous occurrence of the same words appearing in the same order, or this one phrase in this book was the same phrase that this character mentioned in another book from 50 years ago. You don't see those kind of copyright suits, but in the music industry you do. So I'm curious how they're going to go after the AI, which is even a more incongruous collection of notes that it pulls together. There's only so many ways, scales are limited, and music is limited to pleasing tones of the scale, and certain combinations of notes sound more pleasing and are non-discordant. And so if you're going to make listenable music, you're going to have to use those same notes, and sometimes they're going to be in the same order. So an AI that throws things together and creates things out of all the notes of all the songs ever written is going to, have some familiarity to it, if not. And both of these apps are amazing. If you haven't worked with Udio or Suno, it writes incredibly believable and even arable songs you could put on the radio today, and not too many people would realize that they're AI. It writes decent lyrics. It writes choruses. It knows music structure of a song. So I think there's a lot of fear in copyright holders right now over them being replaced or having to compete with AI-generated songs. So that's what's triggering us a lot of the lawsuits, I think.
Go, Jesse.
Courtney, you said you weren't sure how they're going to go after the AI generative models. I bet it's with a whole lot of money and a prayer that the judges, politicians, and general population don't really understand what's going on under the hood of these generative AI models. So I think they got a good chance.
Yeah, it seems to be. I think they actually have a hard chance. It's going to be hard for a judge to understand how the computer's not just doing something faster that everybody's doing. Everybody's watching stuff and looking at stuff, and everything influences them. And then they make up new things that sound relatively the same. They're not copying. It's not like they're actually copying it. They're influencing a model. I think that's going to be it's going to be hard for a lot of judges. And I think it's most importantly, I think it's going to be hard for the current Supreme Court to do that. So I think that the real danger here with the lawsuits is, the error that they put it into, just the current environment of the legal system may not be as open to them as previous years. And so the problem is permanent decisions get made by whoever's there at that moment. If you think that AI is going fast now, wait until they lose these lawsuits. $1 trillion will just flow into the system. A lot of people are sitting on the sidelines waiting to see how this actually works. They're concerned about all of these things around copyright, around all those bits and pieces. And I think that they'll, and there is a chance. I mean, as Jesse said, there's a chance that they're going to be able to win it. I actually think the chances are less than 50% that they will win these cases. And if they lose these cases, the acceleration will go. I think we're going at about 10% the speed it could go right now for a variety of reasons. And so, if it gets up to 50%, it will be, an entirely different world. And so I think there was an advantage to leaving it in limbo and complaining about it than actually doing something about it. So we'll see what happens. Next question.
Craig McFarland in Boston, Massachusetts says Blackmagic Design updated their ATEM switcher software to 9.5 2 weeks ago and a minor update today. Is there anything noteworthy in 9.5?
Well, I thought, I was looking at it. I was thinking that you were talking about 9.5, 9.5.1. 9.5.1 just looks like it fixed something that 9.5 broke. So 9.5 is a big update. It is. Let me see if I can pull this up here for you. So this is, they have a list of it's for most of the switchers. I mean, adding SRT support is a big deal. Being able to sync recordings to the cloud, webcam USB routing. So that means you can route your multicam, your multi-views out via the USB. I really wish, for those of us who had two webcams, I wish we could do them both independently, which I don't believe you can do. Supports live editing of recorded files, and I think that has to do with, I think that's in Resolve. I'm not sure if that's going to be, and that's the concept of building, I believe this is the concept of building growing files, which we have to do some research on. Network storage, adding borderless multi-views, which means the reason you'd want to add borderless multi-views, I mean, some people don't like them, and also you can actually use them in the show if you put them up as this lets you do a 16 by up or a combination of those things. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Again, when you start colorizing your borders, it means that you may want to actually cut to them. So it's probably one of the biggest updates they've had for the ATEMs in one swoop, in the last 2 or 3 years. So it's a pretty big update. Then they broke some stuff, which is why 9.5.1 happened. And I haven't updated to 9.5 yet because I usually wait for the 0.1 release to make that actually work. Because when you see that many updates to something, you generally want to hang back a couple weeks and see if they broke anything, which they did. But it was a pretty quick response, and they've got it corrected. And I think it's a great update. Next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas says Ulanzi has a new compact video switcher for less than $300 US. The coolest feature is the control surface. It can be separated from the mainframe. Is this a toy or a production tool? And he's got a YouTube link to it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I think it's interesting because they're aiming after the ATEM market, obviously, if we take a look at it here. It looks a lot like an ATEM. You've got your audio follows video, and you've got a couple of mixing knobs on here, which is interesting. And you've got a slider for your, T-bar. But like was mentioned, the interesting thing is when it's together like this, it has a connector that connects the inputs from the control surface. But the control surface can disconnect from the input side. This is the input side down here on the bottom. So with the control surface disconnected over a USB-C link, there's a USB-C link that carries power and control signals to the unit when they're separated. That means you can put the control surface in a convenient place and have all the I/O, and it looks like the I/O is almost exactly the same as the ATEM. It has the unbalanced mic 1 and 2 input. One interesting thing is it does have a headphone output over here on the control surface, so you can plug a pair of headphones into it, which is handy. Unfortunately, the ATEM Mini never had a headphone output, which is one of its big drawbacks. And then the C2C is the connection, the connector between the control surface and the I/O box, which you can stick away out of the way and keep all those wires off your desk. And that is a convenient way to clean up your desktop. So it has that advantage to it. It remains to be seen, how well their software is for it and how stable it is. It runs off DC, just similar to the ATEM. So it's a good entry-level way to try it out. I haven't tried it yet. Anyone tried it?
No, I think it's brand new, so I haven't seen it. Go ahead, Jesse.
I think you breezed over one of the more interesting features, and that is that it has 4K pass-through. So it has one input and one output that takes 4K in and puts 4K out. So if you're a gamer, this could be a really interesting device because you'd get that full resolution signal into your stream. And also, it would be probably 1080 by the time it gets to your stream, but you have 4K out, so it could be 4K when you're playing it on an actual screen at home. Any bell and whistle is nice, but it is so hard to extract from the ATEM ecosystem once you're in it. The additional software and the connectivity with cameras boy, is it hard to extract from that. Not that I even want to. I have an OC Go stream. I considered using it for an office hours just to see how it would go. It wasn't. I didn't have it plugged in for 2 minutes before I went back to the ATEM just because of autofocus and camera shading.
Well, and I think that the other thing is the software. I mean, people say, well, you can run it without the software, and that's fine, but the software is really powerful. Like being able to very quickly move things around and make things work inside of your software and being able to, it really opens up a huge amount of value in the switcher. So I think that that's really the challenge when it comes to someone challenging it. I think that this is really interesting. I do love the idea of getting rid of all the cables. I've got all these cables on my desk going into my ATEM Extreme right now, and I would love to put it somewhere else. And what I would love to do is have this little ATEM switcher, which I may do, and get one of the little controllers eventually that Blackmagic just came out with. That's designed, this tiny little controller that I can put in here instead. So then I get rid of a lot of gack that is sitting on my desk. And so I do think that it's an interesting puzzle that they're solving. I think this is one of the first switchers I've seen that I went, oh, maybe some people would want that, because the other ones I have seen at $300, I've been like, I don't think so. So this one definitely innovates a little bit more there. I think that those audio the audio pots that are on the top, I look pretty plasticky. I'm not sure how long they'll last, but maybe. But I think that I think that it does feel like they innovated, and that there are some people that will be interested in this. But I do agree with Jesse that it's going to be a hard sell to get people out of what they're used to with the ATEM, especially once someone has. I know we talk about this almost every show, but once you have Mix Effect Pro on an ATEM, it becomes a much, much more powerful tool. And at that point, it becomes, I think Mix Effect Pro has as much sticking power for these ATEMs as from a point of view of having a hardware system that isn't connected to your computers, that is just low level, I'm going to switch, but then has a ton of software control. It's a big deal. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I just noticed on the control surface, one thing that looked curious is it has this play pause button, so maybe you can play and pause videos from there, program on off, and I'm not sure what these 1, 2, 3s are. Maybe those are macro
My guess was
buttons.
they're either macros or media pools.
Could be, but this is the thing that disturbs me is the power button is a button that looks like all the other buttons, and it's right next to the mute button. That could be problematic to turn it off in the middle of a show.
I will say that I'm much more I'm much more in the line of power buttons should be pulling the power out, like for a production tool. Like let's just a lot of the tools that we have don't have switches. They just you power it up or you power it down, but there's no switch to turn it off. Go ahead, Jesse.
Of all the features that these new boards have, the ATEM doesn't. The onboard play pause, the playback and pause is the most essential. And if any good comes of all these other products coming, it will be pressure on Blackmagic to have some playback function, which I don't think they will ever do because of the hyperdecks. But at least a little pressure is nice.
I mean, they have playback now with, I really want to play. We're going to do I announced this in Discord if anyone's in the area and wants to play along. We're doing a soccer coverage, and I'm really trying to figure out if I can get the DaVinci Resolve stuff set up so that I could send a video out to Resolve and see if I can actually figure this whole thing out of this sports replay. I just don't know. It is, so they have a way to do that playback now with Resolve. I just felt like the Resolve is like the weirdest way to do that, but I haven't used it yet, so I might like it once I do it. But I do, like Jesse, really wish I had something where I could just load up clips and play them back, or more importantly, be able to play back things I was recording. And right now, that's a hard thing to do. Next question.
Funsak Georgie and Dharamshala. Greetings, panelists. Our school wants to do a quiz contest between the houses contest along the lines of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I did a quick search and found some PowerPoint files to do the questions. Do you have any other ideas for the questions? Thanks.
Go ahead, Bill.
So if you've got about $160 you want to throw at this, we used to have one of these in the house because my wife is a school teacher, and the kids love this. It's a simple little lockout system with all these buttons for the panelists. They go on regular telephone cords out, but once one pushes quickly, it locks everybody else out. So you always know who answered first. There is a certain competitive aspect to this that really made it a lot of fun to use this in a classroom situation. And in my case, I was so obsessive that we set up a bunch of little GoPros on the buttons so that we could put it over a little video recording. So it's just a tool if you want to use it to have some more fun with that and have the money to toss at it, or maybe you can find one used. It was fun.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I wrote some software to do this for some network quiz show years ago. And it was kind of problematic to do it because, and it might be difficult to do it in PowerPoint because it had to do, in a quiz show, to do graphics for it, you usually have to have conditional branching. Maybe you can do that in PowerPoint where you can say, if they answer this, go to this slide. If they answer that, go to that slide. If they get it wrong, go to this slide. And so jump around in the sequence of slides. PowerPoint's mainly designed to go from slide to slide to slide to slide sequentially, but conditional branching is something that might be required to run the graphics for a quiz show. So you might end up having to write something yourself in one of the easy to program languages, in Swift or something like that has that conditional branching. You can load your graphics in, and you can have a keyboard set up to hit a key for the answer and come up with the right graphic for whatever that condition is that was met in the quiz show.
Really feels like this could be a really fun product, building like a game show product, like software, or even like linking iPhones together or Android phones as well for Courtney. But being able to have something that is, because you could do it if you did the subscription. I mean, if you subscribe to a server, you could do it online. The latency might be a problem, just from the lockout not happening fast enough or whatever. But with a global clock, it could technically know when it happened. Because if it was close, it would know which one was actually first. Anyway, it's an interesting puzzle, and I would say that maybe someone's already done that, but they haven't done it well enough because we don't know what it is. so there's that means there's still a market opportunity. Doesn't matter whether someone's done that or not because no one knows that it exists. Next question.
David Brady in New York City is up next. For temporary install of a video mapping project, I need to spec out gear. I need a little guidance on ordering fiber and adapters for long-distance video transmission. And this is from the front of house to projectors in the back. What is recommended?
Typically for us, we would typically get fiber, and it just depends on how many feeds you want. You want single mode fiber. Typically, you don't want multi-mode. You're going to want, I like ST connectors. So these are, they kind of feel like a BNC connector. They'll twist on. In most fiber that we rent ends up coming at ST. And then what you do is you have a bunch of adapters. The ST can go to LC, SC, whatever else you need to plug into things. But because a lot of your SFPs will be LC. I like the ST connectors. Typically, we use TAC 12. You might want to go to a TAC 24, depending on how much video you're moving back and forth. Remember that we try to be conservative and just say each strand is a video signal, but you could put up to 8 video signals on one strand using different wavelengths. I use the fiber connectors that I like the most are yellow bricks. So those are Lynx. Yellow bricks are the ones that I use probably that I've really found to be the most solid, but there are copperheads and rattlers and a variety of other others that you can get that are much smaller and less expensive to use. Also, Blackmagic and AJA make their own fiber converters, for a lot of these as well. So, but you're gonna, it just depends on what you're doing there. One thing to think about if you need it, how much time do you have to set up? If you don't have a lot of time, then you kind of want to build a control node, like basically a video stage box where everything's kind of pre-wired, and all you got to do is plug the stuff into the back and plug the other stuff into the front. If you've got a little time, that it's a little more flexible. Otherwise, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, if you're just looking at sending video to a projector, you might look at, there's a number of manufacturers of these HDMI fiber extenders that convert HDMI signal to fiber and send it over a fiber cable up to, this is 10 meters, but depends on how far you need to send it. There's some that'll go 100 meters. So you can take a look at those. That's the simplest way. That way you don't have to have a bunch of external converters and powering them and Most projectors don't, depends on the type of projectors you're going into, but most, consumer type projectors don't have fiber inputs on them. So you'd have to go through an adapter to convert that fiber back to HDMI at the projector side and a converter at the send side to convert it to fiber, or you'd have to have a fiber output on your switcher. So I think an all-in-one cable solution is the easiest way and also less points of failure along the road.
And you can get HDMI. I mean, we were talking about I think I was talking about SDI to fiber, but you can get HDMI to fiber as well, and put those on either end if that's what you're looking for there. To get them, actually, there's a lot of rental houses. PRG, of course, in most cities like San Francisco and New York and so on and so forth, will just rent you rolls. You can rent 1,000 feet. Without too much trouble. So those are, I think that at single mode, fiber is technically rated at like 5 miles or something like that. so it can go a long way. But I've never really run it more than a couple thousand feet. Next question.
Mark Sanderson at Chesterfield in the UK wonders, why do switchers have dip to color? When would I ever use this?
Jesse.
I think they have them because it's not a huge investment in terms of cost to research, develop, and implement that feature. And we do use dip to color. We use them a lot when we're doing post-production, but for live settings, you would use a dip to black to kind of reset. Like if you're shooting a live performance with 5 segmented acts, you could considerably dip to black between each act to let the audience know we're kind of doing a reset and the next thing coming up will be a new thing. And we would use dip to white in a live concert environment. So if we're cutting between cameras and it's, a rock band or something like that at a club, the dip to white is a good whoosh, here's some, get your attention back up to the screen because everything just turned white for one frame over the course of a 1-second transition.
Good, Bill.
Along the lines of what Jesse's saying, I use that transition a lot in corporate work, particularly if there are corporate colors involved. So let's say that a company uses a particular teal as their branding color. For me, for creating the video for their show, I do not want to dip to black in the middle of things. I would prefer to always go from a teal background with type to teal and then back out to the next scene because it's just consistent with their color. So you can pick a color, keep it as an aesthetic through the entire edit. So I use that all the time for those kind of things.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, it's kind of like use it kind of like a palette cleanser between dishes. You use it between scenes to separate perhaps commercials or one setup to another setup to separate a show into segments. So it's an indication of segmentation. So you could go to a color, you could go to black or white, dip to black, dip to white. That's what we used to have in the television industry. Used to have to go to black before you start the commercial. Now they just kind of roll them in and cut to them.
Next question.
Mariella Zuche Maria and Webeloa is back again. It's been said this show sometimes has more people listening to it than seeing it online, but other times, like today, more people watching than listening. How would you design a sound system with these things in mind to help make a show actually sound good? Another QR code question.
Well, I think that the thing that we focus on the most is that we really want most of our panelists, if not all of our panelists, to have radio level mics. So really, not. You'll notice that we're not afraid of putting the mics in the scene. we do mic checks. We do a lot of other things. We also have really good video. So I think that one of the things that makes a lot of our tests work well. If you look at the test that we did last night, if you haven't, I would highly recommend it. By the way, I thought it went really well for our first show. But one of the things that makes it work well is the panelists have invested a lot in their setup. So as a result, anytime we all show up to do a show, it instantly looks way better than everybody else's. so it's kind of like instant, like this. So you get to see best case scenario from a contribution because we're paying a lot of attention to our cameras, we're paying a lot of attention to our audio. We kind of frame ourselves up fairly well. So those are all things that make it a lot easier to make this work. So I think that that's part of it. But again, we know that people are listening to it. They could be listening to it the radio app, but they could also just turning on YouTube and opening it up and listening, putting it in the background somewhere. So we really do pay probably more attention to audio than most. But we also pay attention to video, and we don't ignore the fact that we don't ignore the fact that we can show something or circle something. Those are all things that we feel like we can do, but we don't try to lean on that too heavily because we know that a large percentage of our viewers, our listeners in the process. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and it is kind of difficult because for this show, we don't really have a person running the audio board. Mickey sometimes does, but we're all kind of on our own to generate our own high quality audio, and it is a problem with Zoom does a very good job of noise removal, so that helps us along the way. I've got personalized audio turned on, and that is trying to filter out the air conditioner that's on behind me because we're in the middle of a heat dome here in the United States. So it's quite toasty without any air conditioning on. So trying to equalize the levels between people that are coming in from 4 or 5 different locations can be problematic to produce an audio show that is even sounding and good sounding. Now, I am afraid to have the microphone in the shot, as you can see. It comes from so many years of hearing those dreaded words shouted out working in television and film as, "Mike's in the shot! Cut!" And so that makes me a little nervous about bring the mic up into the shot. So
yeah, and
I keep mine just out the shot.
and one of the things that you and I literally put my mic in the shot specifically to communicate to people that it's okay, because I'd really prefer people to put their mic in the shot and sound better. So like and Courtney sounds fine, but a lot of people will put their mics out of the shot and they don't have the same quality mic, and it sounds doesn't sound good. So but I think that. And I always want to keep on creating a social acceptance of having the mic in the shot. So I do it on purpose. And so I think that audio is so important. And one thing you don't usually see on the show is we do a lot of mic checks ahead of time. So we're trying to get our levels plus or minus 3 or 4 dB of each other, and that makes a big difference. And it's something you don't see in a lot of shows. Is that happening? And I have to admit, after getting used to listening to the show, because I'll listen to it when I'm not on, I will admit that I've become fairly unforgiving for other shows not sounding good. I barely will listen to a radio show now with phoners. I just think phoners are just not acceptable anymore. We've got Zoom. You can bring people in over Zoom. You don't need to call them on the phone and have it sound like a phone. As a listener, I feel disrespected by phoners now. Next question.
Next one comes from Tom Hamrick in Dallas, Texas. I'd like to split 1 to 2 the HDMI signal coming from my 10-bit camera. Is there an affordable 10-bit HDMI splitter?
I don't know how many HDMI splitters are affordable. I think the affordable part is the part that I'm not, getting, most of these now. What I would do is I would look at Monoprice. I know this will sound crazy, but Monoprice has a variety. I'm using what's called a Blackbird here. And this Blackbird is an 8x8 matrix. And I'm going to use it for a couple more weeks until I switch over. I'm going back to SDI. I've given up on HDMI. So anyway, because I need more routing. The Blackbird line comes in a lot of different places, and I think most of it is 10-bit. Go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, wayward mouse. Yeah. I did find, there's one from Rockfish here that's only $69. It claims to be, I have not used this one, so this isn't an endorsement. You can get it at Best Buy, 2-output HDMI splitter with 4K 60 hertz HDR pass-through, so it's probably 10-bit at a reasonable price, so 1x2. I don't think it'll strip HDCP off of, but because it's a commercial product that's carried by Best Buy. But there are a lot of the newer ones, the new splitters that are 4K compatible, usually will pass 10-bit video for you.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out whether it's 10-bit or not as well, but I'm using this in my system now. It's a Triplight, and the ones I always look for, the passive splitters I've never had any luck with. This, like most of them, has a wall wart that gives you a little bit of boost from the signal coming through. This has been really useful for me, and I use it to split between prompter and my overhead monitor, and it's been solid as a rock. But again, I was looking online, couldn't tell whether or not it's a 10-bit splitter, but it's a solid little unit for splitting the signal, but that's as far as I know.
Next question.
Next question, Josh. Hotwout looks like. How out? In Memphis, Tennessee. I'm new to cloud production and find it intimidating. Is there a recommended video tutorial or a step-by-step guide, VizRT Vectar or vMix in the cloud?
My recommendation is if you're watching, I know you came in on the QR code, but go to officehours.global/join. Make sure you're getting the email. When you get that email, get into Discord and, start asking. And again, we're going to put out what you'll see is an announcement where we're opening up the Vector group a little bit wider. My recommendation is really to be part of some of the meetings that we're having on Vector internally. I don't know if there's a lot of, the best way to learn these things is to do them. So we're going to be, that show that we're doing, you can be part of the meetings, you can be part of that discussion. Vector is something that you can download, you can use, and we're working very closely with Viz on that development. So it is something that you can learn with our group. We're going to be doing more kind of labs and so on and so forth, but make sure that you're on our mailing list so that you know when those things are happening. But we're going to be doing a lot more with Vector. I don't have as much support. I mean, we have a lot of people in our group that know vMix, so you can always ask questions in the vMix forum. But the best thing to do is open it up, bang on it. There's some stuff on YouTube. Don't worry about the step-by-step as much as trying to get something done that you're trying to get done, and then start asking questions. And we have a lot of people internally that know a lot about vMix, and so they can answer your questions as you go. But I find the best way to learn is really to do it and ask questions, especially if you have an environment of people who know how to answer those questions, and we do. So there's a lot of people that if you go into the our vMix forum, there's other forums too, but our vMix one, you'll find people that know the answers, and they'll be able to guide you down that path. But the best thing to do is to find something you want to cover or something you want to edit and try it, and then write down all the questions, bring them up here. And we'll do the best we can to answer those. But you can also use the Discord forums, and we'll do some more labs on it. We're focused on Vector. I'll be honest, the folks at vMix just never return our calls, so that's why we don't do any labs on it, because we have a lot of people who use vMix, and we just don't get any support at all from them. So we don't have any. It's very hard for us to build something up without any kind of support at all. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Harold Williams in Portsmouth. Hotel Wi-Fi has been unstable. Shocked. What do the pros use for a successful live stream?
Jesse?
I'm going to speak about using the internet, the hotel's internet, and I hope somebody else will jump in with bringing in, 5G routers or, getting a signal in that isn't from the hotel. The bad news is hotel Wi-Fi is by nature unstable. You cannot rely on it. If a client is asking us to do a stream from, a conference room in a hotel, first meeting we have with them, we tell them that if we're on Wi-Fi, we cannot guarantee any type of stability, and they need to know that in advance. Please pardon the street sweeper going by. The good news is, in general, when we're doing streams from hotels, we're in the conference centers, which are all on the first floor, and it tends to happen that the actual server rooms in the hotel are on the same floor. They're not up on the fifth floor with the hotel rooms. They're down there with all the offices and the conference rooms. We bring hundreds of feet of Ethernet cable and do everything we can to run a hard line. I hope someone else will speak on getting a signal in from out of the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, we do it in a variety of different ways. I've worked in a lot of hotels, and it really depends on the hotel and the size of the hotel. There are some hotels that are particularly good at this. There are some hotels that are not particularly good at this, and so it just really depends on where you're working. So things like, there are the Four Seasons, the Mandarin, the Wynn, those types of things. They have really good IT staffs, and they can parcel up any kind of connection that you need in almost any non-guest room. So there'll be Ethernet, somewhere in almost every room that they have. Now, not all hotels are going to be like that, but the higher end hotels tend to have a really good IT staff. That usually comes with a cost. It's going to cost you sometimes as much as $5,000 or $10,000 to have that connection there as part of your bill. But you're going to have a dedicated IT staff, someone on call. There's going to be someone that's going to hand it to you. So it comes with that cost, to set that all up. But usually you can open up a port. Sometimes they'll want to register your computer. So you're going to hook your router or computer, and they're going to register the MAC address and make it available. So there's a bunch of different ways they might manage that. But it is so that's, usually when it's more expensive, not always. It's usually more stable also because they have dedicated staff because they're charging for it. So when it's cheaper, it's not necessarily better. Some hotels like the Mandarin they have certain sets of suites that are still Ethernetted in. And the reason is they're leaning towards some government, some of the Mandarins, like the one in DC leans towards officials that want, hardline VPNs and so on and so forth. And so they have a set of suites that are all still Ethernet enabled, so that you can do that out of the rooms that they have there. So it just depends on the kind of hotel. So you are going to want to get ahead of that. You're not going to want to use Wi-Fi in a hotel. Like you don't want to use. I mean, we might jump into a meeting like this with it, but I would not do a job with Wi-Fi in a hotel. Outside of that, for larger events, we've used a mixture of. Generally, it's always two ways out. So if I don't have any internet from the hotel or from the place that we're staying, we're going to want two other things that are completely different from each other. And so not two cell things, but two things. So in some hotels, we've actually brought the switch in to provide a connection. Which can be done, but you need a little time oftentimes to do that. The most popular one for us is a mixture of a live view and a sat truck. So the sat truck becomes our major connection, and the live view becomes the backup to the sat truck. And so those are the two there, depending on how important the event is. Depends on what kind of sat truck we use and whether we're using an extender with our live view and all those other bits and pieces. But those are the two most common for us to do if we're not going to use the hotel. But usually any modern hotel is going to have an IT staff and be able to do it, because you're not the only person that's asked for these kind of connections. And so I think that's the thing you want to look at. For the for the organized events by large corporate, they'll bring somebody in to manage the internet for you. So so like a Salesforce will bring in a company called Straight Up. So Straight Up Technologies comes out of LA. They do Dreamforce, like it's 100,000 people and the Wi-Fi all works, and they'll provide hard lines. They'll provide another company's called Castle. These are the ones that really do most of these large events like this, and where they're providing Wi-Fi, hard lines, infrastructure, backbones, trunking. All those things are all provided by them. So it just really depends on the scale of the event that you're doing as to what you're actually looking for. Next question.
Tim Mannon comes into us from Melbourne, Australia this morning, was doing an audio recording in Resolve recently. Any idea why Loopback by RogueAmoeba could see the Dante audio, but Resolve would not meter nor record?
Go ahead, Courtney.
This doesn't come from personal experience, but a little research on this. I found some people that have found that the Resolve, using the Dante virtual sound card software on your Mac, Resolve can see it for outputs, but it doesn't see it for inputs, apparently, according to this.
Well, but I think he's talking specifically about RogueAmoeba, which would be a piece of glue in between.
Well, he says that RogueAmoeba can see it as an input and output from the Dante virtual sound card software, but Resolve doesn't see it. Yeah. And I don't know if he's trying to see Resolve seeing it out of after it goes through hijack or loopback. But
if you're doing this if you're doing this right now, I can tell you loopback's broken. So loopback, the last update of loopback moved from ACE to their own audio management system, and I can't get it to work anywhere. So I updated loopback, and everything's broken. So I think that they're working on it. I'm trying to send data to what's there, but the new update changed the audio engine in loopback from from the ACE, which was really a pain in the neck we all were like, when are they going to get rid of this? So I don't have to restart into management mode. And so we all complained about that until they actually fixed it and then broke it. So now nothing's working. And so I'm using another option that you may want to take a look at is Black Hole. So Black Hole is a free, I think it's a Donaware or whatever they call it. That you can donate money to Black Hole. Just search for Black Hole Audio, and it is just a straight in, straight out. So you don't have all the controls that you would have with Loopback, but if you're trying to get from Dante to another device, it will create a virtual device of the inputs to the outputs, and you can get this. I have a 16-channel Black Hole, so that's one way that you can do the routing if for some reason you can't see the Dante directly. Next question.
Marielle Shushamera of Webelow is back with, when preparing for degree absolute, how would you position the cameras and the lights? China balls to greatest effect? This question is not about a graduation from university.
For preparing for degree absolute, there's no way to say what we would do. The way, what you do is you walk into the room with your DP walks into the room with their gaffer and everything else, and they start. Or we build a 3D. When you're talking about absolute, we go there months or weeks ahead of time. We take a bunch of pictures. We often take a bunch of measurements. We figure out where all the power, where the rigging, where all the other things are. We figure out what we're going to do. Oftentimes we take. I do LiDAR scans, or we take polycam and scan things out. I will at minimum do a polycam of a location. So then we'll go back and talk about it. Like, how are we going to do this, and what is this all going to look like? And then we're going to prep that stuff, and then we're going to show up, and we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to respond to the process. And it's not going to be a certain kind of light or a certain kind of rigging. It is what that space calls for that shot, and how you want it to feel and how you want it to look. And it is when you're talking about the top level of this stuff, it's all a dance between what the director wants, what the look of and feel of the show is, what you have access to. So, and you're going to see that I'm working on getting we're going to be doing a shoot, hopefully in August, where you get to see all that. You can see my brother do it. So stay tuned for that. Go ahead, Courtney.
I'm not sure what a degree absolute is, but I will mention that China balls, while they provide a nice, diffuse, pretty-looking light on people, they're the most difficult to control, because you can't control where that light goes, because it goes out, 360 degrees in all directions. So it lights up the ceiling, it lights up the back wall, it lights up the person, but you have very little control over it. And if you're doing an interview with two people that are facing each other, you want to be able to control the light, make the light pretty and soft, but directional, to keep it off the wall behind it, so you have a good contrast between your foreground subject and your background subject. And you want to keep the light that is hitting one person from hitting the other person, so you would have that cross-lighting effect. If you had two China balls, you'd be double illuminating each of them from the others. So you want to have something like a soft box, or some big, wide, soft area with an egg crate on it, so it can keep the light soft but controlled in one direction, to keep it from spilling onto the background or spilling onto the other person. That's my suggestion.
Go, Jesse.
Alex, would you be kind enough to explain what degree absolute means in this context?
I think it's just the best possible, is what I'm going to guess. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so I just wanted to amplify what Courtney was saying. One of my biggest problems when I started playing with China balls is, because they're a 360-degree light-emitting source, all of a sudden I had to be acutely aware of any reflective surface on my entire set, because not only was the subject in front of the camera lit, but the entire crew and all the equipment and everything else was lit, because the China balls were just going in all directions. They do make professional China balls that have black over 306 or 180 of the 360 degrees. That eliminates some of this, but you're still putting out so much light. I've seen them used to good effect in things like big cycloramas and things like that, but it is one of my least favorite solutions, unless it's particular for that circumstance. If I'm lighting a round table and I need light on all the faces of everybody, a China ball in the center of the table hung above it can be a useful thing, but I consider them a limited use lighting object.
Yeah, we don't see China balls used very often, but when they're used, a lot of times they give that kind of, you're in a living room kind of feel, or this very warm, like everybody's there. Again, you don't have the same level of control. I always think about the look. I don't know if they use China balls for this or not, but like at the end of the game, there's this kind of scene in the ballroom, and you just see this kind of warm feel of all this soft light and everything else. And that's the kind of shot that we've seen those in. I worked on one set where we had probably, 100 of them all hanging. It was like it was a graduation, but from high school or something like that. But it was, it was a set that was that, and it felt really good. Like it just was like this. I was like, I wish my house would look like this all the time. All right, next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida, up next, asked Saturday, but the video was not archived. Do you find that you need to reboot ZoomISO on macOS Ventura between shows? I do not reboot between shows. ZoomISO will, if I do not reboot between shows, ZoomISO will lock up Pinwheel. Thanks.
You know, I don't know, and I think that the only reason I'm saying that I don't know is because I generally open up ZoomISO, do my event, and close it and go away. so it's not opened all the time. So I've never seen it. I don't think I've ever seen it lock up. Now I will say that because I'm using so many resources on my computer, before I do an event, because I'm using Mimo Live and I'm using Audio Hijack and Loopback and all these other things where I was using Loopback, I'm using all these things at one time. And as a result, what I often do is I right before I do a show, I kind of get everything where I want it and everything else, and then I restart my computer. And that just clears out anything else, that any other processes that may have been lingering and so on and so forth. So I restart my computer before I do a show that matters. Every time I do that. And so I get everything saved the way I want it, and then I restart it, and then I get into getting ready for the show. And I do that just that it's not a matter of ISO, it's just a matter of general processes that I want to reset. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin says, I need to adapt a 4K graphics signal from HDMI, the source, to Displayport with sync. Any recommendation for cables and or adapters that can do this? So far, I have only found the opposite direction, Displayport to HDMI.
I thought the cables are bidirectional. Go ahead, Courtney. They're not. Courtney's like, no.
No, they aren't. The problem is that the specs are different between the two. Displayport handles higher resolutions and doesn't support HDCP, which is the main problem I think you're going to run into. If you're with an HDMI source, it's going to want to see something that supports HDCP if it's a commercially available adapter. Otherwise, they can't use the HDMI logo on it. If it doesn't support HD pass-through or support HDCP coming back in, it can be problematic. So going the other way is a problem because, you can go from DisplayPort to HDMI, but not necessarily HDMI to DisplayPort.
But he's going from HDMI to DisplayPort right now.
I know, that's what I'm saying. HDMI to DisplayPort is not very common.
Oh, right.
So getting an adapter that goes that direction as opposed to the reverse direction is kind of problematic.
There you go. Next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas, up next. How do you manage vendor coordination and supervision? Most of us approach everything as project work, but over months and years, tampering with systems becomes a huge problem, not just between vendors, but individual technicians.
A lot of times what we do is we get to know each other. We get to know what the people that are used to our process. It is one of the advantages of hiring a company that has done a lot of this and work that has a lot of contacts is that we're not cobbling something together with random people. We have a Rolodex of people that we like to work with. And that's why it's so important to be a good steward when you're on a show is because everyone's making decisions about, I should call that person again or I shouldn't call that person again. And so I think that that's the important puzzle. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, there's another piece of this, which I agree with everything Alex is saying, but it's also, if you're just doing, like, let's say you have a big client and you're doing a lot of general work for them, but they have 2 big conferences a year. So twice a year, you want to get your crew back together to do the big conference. Well, those people on your crew have to make a living the rest of the year. And it's not unusual that you'll get to the second event after the first one was a success and you'll reach out for that same crew, but they've booked other things because they have lives that are going on. So relationships, planning, preparation, sometimes it's tough. The companies that are doing work every month tend to get their phone calls answered very promptly from all the crew people that work on those constant projects because they know that's a stream of income for them that's dependable. If you only have a couple of things a year going on or you're doing the once a year big thing, it is harder, in my experience, to get people to hang on to wait to come to your big event when you don't have anything for them in between. It's just part and parcel of business.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons that you want to book people early. So if you're doing an event, you want to tell people as far out as you can that you are doing that event so that they can go out and get the best people booking. You want to be booking your crews 1 to 2 months in advance for the best crews if you can. So that makes a huge difference in the quality that you get because it's just a lot more stable. Really excited. We've got Andy and Jonathan are going to be here in just about 90 seconds. Just a quick reminder that we've got the audio on the ATEM Part 2 tomorrow. The first one was very popular, one of our most popular shows of this year. So a lot of people are evidently trying to figure out how to use audio on their ATEM. And so we're going to be back talking about that tomorrow. So we talked about the basic flow last time. We're going to talk about processing, audio dynamics and processing tomorrow with the team. Thursday, we're going to talk about the Apple iPhone 15. How are we doing production with that right now? So we're going to be digging into, it's really changed a lot of things that a lot of us do with production and what we consider our iPhone capable of doing. And so we're going to talk about that and what the different tools are that we're using and the way that we're kind of putting all those bits and pieces together. Friday, Central Control Core. We finally get Joe DeMax on the show. We've been going on and off of having Joe on, and we're really excited to have him. And so that's going to be a great show on Friday, talking about their core technology. So stay tuned for that. Also, of course, all of this is brought to you by your donations. We have Zoom expenses and server expenses and insurance and all kinds of other stuff, and you can help us by going to officehours.global/donate.